Hey, welcome to yesterday's recap. In these kinds of short videos, I'll make a revision of the code we wrote yesterday, so that will prepare you for the code we will write today. So quickly, what we did yesterday is we had this script, which gets user input from the user. Actually, it does that multiple times, so 1 here, 2 here, 3 times. Each time it asks for input, it shows a message to the user, so that's a variable, and the value of the variable is defined in here. So whatever input the user enters, it's stored in these variables, so 3 variables in this case, and then we store those values in this list. And as you know, you can also store other values in a list, so not only variables but also literal values. At the end, each of them is a value, but these just happen to have a name, a variable associated with the value. And then we just print the to-dos. So those are just some print functions. So that's what you learned yesterday. Variables, you learned the input function, the print function, the type function, you learned lists, you learned strings. So ready for today's lessons? I'll talk to you in the next video. See you there. Hi, in this video you will learn how to do batch operations with Python. So what do I mean by that? Well, let's look at the current state of the program. So the program is asking the user 3 times for entering input. So we have 3 functions here. But as we mentioned, this is not sustainable. So what we want is to write the input function only once and somehow tell Python to execute it multiple times. So how do we do that? Well, let me show you that to you. I'll delete all these, we don't need them anymore. We only need the input function once here, and then we make some space in here and we use a while loop. So this starts with this while keyword and then make a space and you put a condition. The conditions should be a true statement. Now there are different ways to do this, but as a beginner, start with a simple statement such as 2 greater than 1. So is 2 greater than 1? Well, yes, that's true, always true. So then you put this colon. I'll talk about that more in just a bit. And after the colon then you want to go here and you want to press space 4 times. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that is known as indentation. So that part here for white spaces is indentation, and it is part of the syntax. So when you write this while keyword, whatever comes down here, all the code is indented under that while keyword. So in this case, what we want to do is we want to ask the user for input. So I'll execute this now and you'll see what will happen. But first, let me rename this variable from to-do1 to to-do. It makes more sense. And right click and execute. So enter a to-do. Clean. Again enter a to-do. Throw. Again meet. Free up Pluto. So we keep getting asked for to-dos over and over again, and this happens infinitely. Why does it happen infinitely? Well, because 2 is always greater than 1. So the way the interpreter, the Python interpreter, is executing this script is this. First it executes this line, it stores the enter a to-do string to this variable, and then it checks if 2 is greater than 1. If it is, it executes this line. So we get that first prompt here, enter a to-do, and then the interpreter looks if there are other lines down here. If not, it goes back to the while loop, to the first line. Again, it checks if 2 is greater than 1, so it checks this condition. 2 is greater than 1, so it executes that line again. Enter a to-do. To understand this better, you can stop the program, use this button to stop it, and then you can print out the to-do and maybe print out next, like that, and execute. So enter a to-do, clean. So you see that Python executes this line first, and then it prints out the to-do that the user entered. It prints out next, so that string, and then it goes back again to the first line. It executes that line again. That's why this is called a loop. It's a while loop. We also have for loops, which is another type of loop, which we'll cover later on. We're gonna need a for loop also as we develop the program. Before we close this video, I want to change something from this program. There is a simple way to write a condition. So instead of thinking, oh, what is something that is true, Python has figured out a better way to just say true. So while true, execute this. So true is always true, just like 2 is always greater than 1, true is always true. So if I execute this program now, you can press that to rerun the program. So now we are running the new script with true there. So enter clean, and so you get asked for to-dos over and over again. So what is true? True is a boolean, is a data type. A boolean is like strings and lists. So that was a string data type, this is a boolean data type, and this here is a typical use of this data type. You can also have false here, false, but if we rerun the program, nothing will happen because false is false, so none of these lines will be executed. Therefore, the end version is while true, execute these. And that's about this video. So now the next step is to store these to-dos in a list. How do we do that? I'll show you in the next video. See you there. In this video you will learn to use Python methods. We're gonna need to use a method to add to-dos to a list, because currently in our program all we do is get the to-do from the user and then we print out that to-do, and that's all. We are not storing the to-dos in a list. So I will delete these and add some code here which stores to-dos in a list. You remember we did have some code previously where we wrote a list. We created a list using brackets, and then inside we added to do 1, to do 2, and so on. So now of course we don't have to do 1s and to do 2s. We don't have those variables. We have a to do variable. So to do is one variable, to dos is another variable, two different variables. To do now is added to the to dos list. So let's print out to dos in here and see what we get. Run, enter to do, clean, throw. So this is the output we get. Let's try to analyze this to understand the problem. So while true executes this line first, so we get that output. The user enters clean, and clean goes inside the list. So to-dos list is created, and then it is printed out. So we print out to-dos here. So currently we have only the clean string inside that list. So far, so good. Then the loop goes back again to the first line of the loop. It executes again input, so we get this prompt again. We entered throw, and then the second line is executed. To-dos is equal to that list. What happens here is that this variable will override the existing to-dos variable. So the list we had with clean inside is overwritten by another list with throw inside. So this entire line here overrides that existing list, and so we print out that new list with throw inside. So obviously this here is not the solution. We want to delete that. What we want to do is first create a list outside the loop. To-dos is equal to this empty list. So Python will execute the first line, it creates this string, it creates an empty list, and then goes to the loop. It asks the user for input, the user enters a to-do, and then we append that to-do in the to-dos list, in that list. And we print out the to-dos list. So let's rerun the code. Enter to-do, clean, throw, neat. So that's the list. As you see, the list is being populated with items in every iteration of the loop. So the program is working pretty well. We want to improve it further, of course, and we'll do that in the next videos. But now let's focus on the syntax we used here. You see this dot, and then this keyword is coming after that dot. This is a method. So methods are like functions. You see this function has this parenthesis and an argument, and the method also has parentheses and arguments, but methods are attached to data types, to other objects. In this case, this append method is part of this to-dos variable. Actually, it is not part of the variable, it is part of the object associated with that variable. In this case, the object is a list. You see, it's a list type. And every object has its own methods. So, for example, if you want to access the append method of the to-do, this variable is associated with a string, not a list. So if you try to apply append to that string, you're gonna get an error. Let's try this. Rerun. Enter a to-do. So now we are here at this point, so Python has not yet reached the point where this append line is executed. So enter a to-do like clean, press enter, and you see that is an error. It tells you where the error occurred, so line 7. Line 7 is this one in here. In PyCharm you can also just click that to go directly to line 7. So that's a convenience. And so the cursor is in line 7 now. You also get the line printed out in here, which has the error to-do.append. And then this is a type of the error, attribute error. str object, so str is the type of object, the data type that to-do is associated with. So to-do is associated with an str, with a string object. And so an object has no attribute append. So methods are also referred to as attributes. So a string does not have that append method. That's why we get this error. So how do we fix this error? Well, this is based on our experience as a programmer. The error cannot be fixed automatically by Python. So you have to take a decision, because Python here, the interpreter which interprets our code, is confused. So it doesn't make sense to append something to a string. It does make sense to append something to a list, but not to a string. A string could have different methods, such as capitalize. Let's see what will happen now. Enter to do, clean. I'll use a lowercase string now. Press enter. So clean was printed out by this, but we didn't get any printout from this. So let me remove to-dos, print to-dos and execute again. You see, again, we will not get any printout. Why? Well, because we haven't used a print function. So if you want to see output, you want to use a print function. As you see now, I put this entire expression inside the parentheses of the print function. Now if I execute this, enter to do clean, we will get clean with an uppercase C. So this method capitalizes the first letter of a string and it returns the string with the first letter capitalized. So as you see, the difference between methods and function is that, you know, functions, if this was a function, which is not, it would get that to do as an input in here. It would be capitalized to do inside, but this is not the case, and that is what makes a method a method. So a method refers to an object using that dot notation. And methods can also take arguments. So how do you know what arguments can a method take, and how do you know what methods you can apply to strings and what methods you can apply to lists? How do you know what arguments you can pass to a function? So these are all questions which I'll answer. I'll give you the technique to answer all these questions by yourself, so you can find the code you need by yourself. You'll see the list of methods you can apply to list, and you'll see all the methods available for list. You'll see all the methods that Python has available for string and so on. And I'll show you all that information in the video programming tool or concept of the day. So there is where you learn how to find the code you need. And here we end this video, so thanks a lot. See you. Hey, in this video we will continue our code experiment series, where we try to change things from the code and see how the output changes. So that gives you more understanding about how the code works. For this, I will create a new folder directory, experiments, and then inside here I'll just create a Python file. So the first experiment I wanted you to try is to just say while true and then print anything here, such as hello, the string hello. Now if I right click here and run this script, what I'll get is hello printed out all the time, repeatedly. So nothing is stopping my computer from printing out this string over and over again. So why is hello printed out all the time? That's the first question. Well, it is being printed out because this is always true. So nothing is stopping this line from being executed over and over again. In the bonus example video, which comes later today, you'll see that we can write conditions which will change the behavior of the while loop. So these conditions will control how many times the while loop executes. But this loop here doesn't have such dynamic conditions. So the next question is, how many times is this hello printed out? And the answer is, well, depends on your computer processor speed. So this would be about every X milliseconds or so, depending how able your processor is to receive the instructions and return the output. Another experiment. So let me put here the code that we wrote during the video tutorials earlier. This is the exact code that we have built so far in our app. Now, what would happen if we get this line and paste it inside the while loop? To cut a line in PyCharm, you can set the cursor anywhere in the line, and then in your keyboard, press Ctrl X or Command X. That will cut the line, and then you go here, make a new line, and press Ctrl V or Command V, and that will place the line in there. So now the question is this version better, or was that version with that line there better than this one? If you run this version of the code, it will work the same. So nothing is changing, but is it still a good way to program like this? The answer is no. And that is because it is not necessary to have the variable declaration inside the while loop. So this variable declaration will be executed multiple times because it is inside a loop, and that is not necessary. So that will simply make your program heavier. Even though a variable declaration does not occupy heavy resources, it's still not the best practice to program like this. So we only have to declare the string once. Therefore, I'll just put it where it was here. You don't need to execute that line multiple times. You only put in the while loop things that will be executed in cycles. Another experiment. Try to change capitalize with title and run the program and see how the output changes. Enter a to-do. Clean the room and see what we got. Clean the room with the first letter of each word capitalized. So the capitalize method only capitalized the first letter of the string, so only C was capitalized in the string, but the title method finds all the words and capitalizes their first letters. So that's just another method of strings. And now you might ask, how do you know all these methods? Well, I'll answer you that question today in the programming tool of the day. So in that video later today, I'll show you the secret on how to find the least of all methods that you can apply to strings and other objects. So stay tuned for that video. Two more small experiments. If you remove print and you just say to-do.title, as you might guess, if you enter a to-do, you will not get any output because the print function is not there. So let's get the print function back and do our last experiment. If you remove these two parentheses here, the parentheses of the title method, if you remove that and you run the script, you clean the room, and what you get is this output. So this is simply saying that this is a method. But in order to get the output that a method generates, you need to use those parentheses. So these are always necessary. Keep that in mind, and thank you for following the code experiments for today. See you in the next videos. Hey, in this video we will look at another while loop example so that you understand the while loop from another perspective. I'll show you two examples actually. The first one is a very small program where we ask the user to enter a password and then we try to check if the password is correct. If it is correct, we tell the user that the password was correct. If it's not, we continue to ask the user to enter a password over and over again. This is how I would do it with a while loop. So think about the user again. What do you want to show them first? Well, ask them to enter a password. So get the password from the user using an input function. Enter password. So that's the message we show to the user. The user will enter a password, and the passwords that the user enters will be stored in this password variable, and then we check while password, so while that variable value is not equal to pass123, so let's suppose that the correct password is pass123. And that's how we start the loop. So what is this expression here? And what is this? Let me show that to you in the Python console. You know, if you do pass123 equal to pass123, what you get is true if I execute this, because this is an equal operator. So you get true. The opposite of an equal operator is the not equal operator, which comes with this exclamation mark instead of two equal operators. So if I press that, I will get false. So what I'm saying here is that while the password is not this, then we keep asking the user for a password. So we execute that again, over and over again. Otherwise, I'll unindent now and go outside of the while loop. Otherwise, we say password was correct. So let me execute this now. Enter password. Let's say pass1. Oh, no. Pass2. No. Pass123. Yes, password was correct. So to wrap it up, this is how this code works. This line here is executed only once. Everything that is outside a loop is executed only once in Python. But this expression here is inside the loop, so it will be executed as far as this condition stays true. And that condition is dependent on what the user enters here. So as soon as the password that the user enters is different from pass123, we will get this executed over and over again. Otherwise, the loop ends and we show the user this message. That's how this code works. Another example now. I'll rename this to bonus2.1 and create a new file, bonus2.2. This time I want to use the while loop to produce a series of numbers as output. So I want to produce numbers from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 will be printed out in the command line. How can we generate these numbers? Well, let me show you how, using the while loop. While. But we start with a value. Let's say x is 1. X is a variable, 1 is a number. And we say while x is less or equal than 6, we do something. And that here is also a comparison operator, just like we had that not equal operator, we also had this equal operator. We also have the comparison operators, such as this one. For example, is 1 less than 3, we get true. Is 1 greater than 3, we get false. Similarly, we have less or equal, so we get true because 1 is less than 3. If you say is 1 less or equal to 3, equal to 1, you get true because 1 is equal to 1, and so on. So that's what we're checking here. If x is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6, this will be evaluated to true. So then I'll print out x, but if I run the script now, what's gonna happen is we're gonna get 1, 1, 1, 1 printed out all the time. So I have to stop the program now, otherwise my processor will get quite busy. So we get 1 printed out because x here will always be less than 6 since its value is 1. So there's no dynamics here. nothing is changing x, therefore we will get this line printed out all the time. But if we change x and say x is x plus 1, then what we're doing is we declare x here equal to 1, we check if x is less or equal to 6, which is true, so we get printed out 1. So in the first iteration we will get 1 printed out. But then here x will be overwritten with this value. So currently x is 1, therefore 1 plus 1 gives 2. So the new value for x will be 2. And then the loop goes again in here. X now is 2, which is still less than 6, so the loop will print out this again. It will update x. It will say x is equal to 2 plus 1, and that will make x 3. The loop goes again, print 3, and so on. So let's run this. And that's the output. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that output was also my intention, and I hope this gives you some more understanding about the while loop. Thanks for following. You saw me previously use methods and functions and other methods such as capitalize. So how do I know all these methods? Is it because I'm too smart, or is there another secret? Well, I assure you that is the latter. So let me show you the secret on how to find the code you need in this video. Using the Python console is recommended for such things. So when you want to explore things out, when you want to test things out, it's good to use the Python console. So let's say again you want to capitalize a string. How do you know what methods to use? Well, you can simply use dir str. Execute that, and what you get is a list as output. So this list contains all the methods you can apply to a string data type, because you know I did dir str. Str represents strings. So this is a keyword in Python, although you can also use any string there and you'll get the same output. So either use str, the keyword representing the string type, or an actual instance of a string. So this list is made of these methods with double underscores, but you don't need to look at them. You don't need to use them. These are used internally by the Python interpreter. The methods we're interested about are after these underscore methods. So for example, capitalize is the first one, so they are ordered alphabetically. So you should get a clue of what the method does by just looking at the name of the method. But then if you want to know more about the method, you can use the help function. The help function gets as input the method, but you need to refer to a string first and then to the method. So str, or just do any string dot capitalize. You don't put any brackets here, any parentheses, just capitalize like that, and these parentheses of the help function, and press enter. And what you get is the help documentation of that capitalize method. So it explains what that method does. And similarly, you can use dir with a list, so list like that, or just do an empty list instance or any items you might have there. And you can also use a variable. So if the variable is associated with a list 1, 2, 3, and you do dir a, you will get the list of methods that can be applied to list objects. So here you can see all the methods you can apply to lists. So you see the append method, and again use help list.append to get the help of that method. Now see something here. This append method has these two arguments, self and object. But let's take a look again back to the capitalize method. So help, capitalize, and compare them. You see, capitalize doesn't get any argument as input. So that is some clue on how to use the methods. So with capitalize, we just put a string and say capitalize, and that's it, no arguments, and you get the capitalized string. But with list, we have the list A, so A is that one. With list, you say a.append, and here, if you execute this, you will get an error because the append method takes one argument. So you need to provide an argument there, and then A will be that list with the 4 appended to the end. So that's why I showed you this part here. Now, what is self? Well, self, you can ignore this for now, we will cover self later. The real argument here is this object. So the object is the number you want to pass to the append method, the number or a string if you want to append a string to the list. So to wrap it up, so far you learned dir, where you put a type and you get the list of the methods applied to that type. Then you can use help on a particular method. But then, how about functions? How do you get a list of functions you can apply? So a function is print, input is a function also. Well, to get a list of available functions in Python, you first need to import built-ins. Now this is an import statement in Python, and I'll talk about import statements later on in the course. So for now, we're simply using this, so we make available the list of built-ins. So now this built-ins can be provided as an argument of the dir function, and if you execute that, you will get a list of these functions and other elements which you can apply directly without the dot notation. So input should be among this. So you should get post these elements with a capital letter, and you should pass also these underscore elements. And then here we have different functions. So these with lowercase are all functions. And here should be the input function. So that's input. If you go to the P letter, you should also be able to find the print function. Here it is. Now you don't need to actually look at this list and learn everything that it is here. I also don't know all these functions. Some are very specific ones, so if you need to know how to do something, it's easier to do some research on Google, because most likely someone else has done that thing before, and there's a discussion or some source on a forum or a blog which shows what functions you can use in Python for that particular thing. So what is important is to know the logic of building a program, and this is what I'm trying to teach you in this course. So we will build a number of programs and you will understand the logic and also learn the core elements of the language, such as the input function, the while loop, list, strings, etc. All these are the core concepts, so don't worry about these elements here. I hope that makes sense, and I'll talk to you later. See you.